We are going to welcome to the stage to do a live version of their podcast, In the Sandbox With Creative Success. I'd like you to welcome, please, Adam from AppsFlyer, Piyush from Product Madness, and Saikala from Ace Games. A round of applause.
So, yes, I can't believe they let us do this live, but for anyone who doesn't know, Piyush and I have this little podcast called In the Sandbox With.
He came up with the name, not me.
We've got 2 listeners at the moment, which is my mum and dad, but we're hoping
and
to
mine
grow
as well.
that listenership. So hopefully you like what you hear and you'll go look up our podcast. What are we talking about?
What's the new, let's talk about creative. What do you think?
Yeah,
Let's do it.
sounds good.
Saikala, what is creative?
I mean, seriously?
She's
No,
going to
we
walk off the stage. Right?
Yeah, I think she's going to walk off. No, but let's start. Let's get into the serious part of it.
Well, let's introduce ourselves first. Who are you?
I thought people knew me. No, sorry. I'm Piyush. I'm Director of Growth at Product Madness. And we've been doing the podcast for the last 2 years. And it's been fun. So please do subscribe if you can.
I'm Saikala. I'm SVP of Marketing at Ace Games, one of the best games developers. Please download Fiona's Farm, available on iOS and Android.
Help out with their creative testing.
What? Our creative Ace. We have Ace Games, that's the name of the company. So our creative is Ace. No, I'm kidding.
Good selling point. And I'm Adam Smart. I'm Director of Product for Gaming at AppsFlyer. So yeah, this is kind of what we do.
Yeah, his name is Adam Smart. Just keep that in mind for the next 20 minutes.
We're going to make smart
I
jokes.
just jumped to 17. Knocking it down. Right, anyway, so let's start very, very basic. What do we mean when we say creative? Either one of you.
I think in the past, okay, not making jokes for now. In the past, it was always static video and playable. Yeah. But now the granularity has gone a lot more than that because we're now looking at the type of content, whether it's UGC, cinematic, mix of both, maybe it's simple gameplay. And even within the playables, it becomes more of a, is it going to look like the actual gameplay or is it going to be a combination of both so that we can mix it with the narrative and stories that we're telling inside our games?
No, definitely. And just to add to that, I think essentially creative is something that, from a marketing standpoint, that's the touch point. That is the touch point for the user. So it doesn't matter what kind of targeting you're doing, what kind of audience you have and stuff like that. That remains the touch point, and it has to be very essential that you have a creative that is consistent across the board, when you're trying to target a user from a creative standpoint to the App Store standpoint to the landing page, everything should be in sync. So creative is the basic touch point that users care about, truly.
So I hear a lot that, like, this whole levers analogy that, with scan and everything, you only have so many levers now, and creative is one of the big ones. Why?
Look, the fact remains that it's about the data inconsistency, essentially. The granularity of data has actually gone down on iOS and potentially going to go down on Android as well in the next coming 2 years, right? Now, if you think you're a UM manager, you have to understand what do you have, what are the options that you have. So basically, there are 3 things for growth marketing. You need to find the right audience. On iOS, the audience part is gone. There's no suppression. It becomes very difficult to use first-party data to actually target users, right? So audience has become quite difficult to sort of work on. Second part is obviously the creative. Now that becomes the biggest lever because that's the only way when you can reach out to the user and communicate a message, even though your message might not be relevant for that audience. Because in this world especially on the iOS side, you might not be able to sort of find the right audience. But still your creative is speaking, if your creative speaking is increasing some sort of brand awareness for the user, that's good enough. And the third part of this is basically the issue that has become bigger right now, especially on iOS, is the creative analytics part. Because it's becoming more difficult to figure out the data at a creative level, especially through scan, because it's almost impossible. You're not going to get a lot of data on that front. Now, you can always get an indicative data or based on opt-in users and stuff like that. But the fundamental issue remains with the creative data is the level. You have a campaign, you have an ad group, you have an ad set. Now, within that, you have banner, video, playables, interstitial, within layers, right? Now, if you wanted to do a very apple-to-apple comparison, you'll go even further and check the size. That 720 cross 90 is behaving like what across the board. So the more granular you go, the less data availability it becomes, and that becomes a bigger concern because you can't validate what is working anymore in that sense. But at the same time,
But hang on, step back. You got the entire process going ahead of you right there. So before we get to that point, what is it that creative actually controls? What does it give you? Like, as far as in my head, all I can really put this down to is whether a user clicks or not, right?
I mean, do you want to? Okay.
I mean, it's a hook, right?
That's what it is.
Creative gives you a hook, especially the first 5 seconds. Depending on the platform, if it's rewarded video, then you can go as long as 30 seconds and 60 and create, excuse me, almost like advertising experience where then people actually follow through the narrative. But if it is something where you don't have to watch to be rewarded for something on any of the SRNs or any of the other networks where you can skip, the hook is the very important vital part. You have only 3 to 5 seconds to hook the view, the attention, and you have to grab the attention of the viewer and convince them to watch the rest of the video or whatever creative might be, so that then you can convey the story about your product, if there is a story, or create a story as well.
But what's
convince them to download.
What's the sort of consequence of that? Like when you're, obviously for
I know what you're trying to say. Effective media buying.
Yeah,
equals ROAS.
When you're doing auctions, no, put the ROAS thing aside because I think that's hocus pocus. But for anyone can disagree, by the way. But with the the knock-on effect of obviously most ad placements you're bidding for in some way, shape, or form, right? So the more clicks that you get for those
creatives?
Yeah, the brain's gone completely.
I think I got the question, so I'll just sort of jump in and add one thing over there, which is, look, there is no way in the world
Don't add anything, just answer the question.
I'm just coming to that. Just give me some time.
Let's give him 5 seconds to get a hook.
If you like what you hear, look up the podcast.
Yeah, this is how we banter. But anyway, going back to the topic. So the issue right now in my head is, if you look at what is creative essentially, like even if you are a gamer, right? So you get a lot of ads about different games. You do get a lot, right? Because obviously, like now you're profiled as a gamer in the audience section, so we know that you're a gamer. We'll try and target you with different, sort of creatives.
Yeah.
Now, I can't target you with one creative. There is no way in the entire world, especially in a gaming space, that one creative would convert the user. There's very less likelihood, unless you're aware of the brand. So it's a stepwise process, right? So you run 2-3 creative just to create the brand awareness that, okay, this kind of game exists, right? 2-3 other creative, if done, I mean, I'm just thinking from a sequence standpoint, right? The next 2-3 creatives, you create another hook saying, okay, you can play the game, maybe do a playable over there because now users are more interested because they're aware of the brand. And the third step is you converting eventually, right? So it's about trying to figure out where I can find you as a user and trying to hammer you with at least 10 12 creatives. That's why the frequency is pretty high. And use that hook in a sequence manner to convert you.
But the more of those ad placements that you convert into a click, that's got to be better for the percentages that are converting to installs and so on and so forth.
It is, but
so the numbers for user acquisition are going to end up looking much, much better because you've got the more clicks coming through for the impressions.
No, but you need to understand that we are paying for the impressions. We're not paying for the click, or we are not paying for anything else. We are paying for the impressions, so irrespective of whether user converts or not.
Yes, but there's more chance of getting an install if the user clicks.
But that's the attribution play. That's where you guys come in.
Yeah, okay.
But overall, from an advertiser standpoint and from a user standpoint, that's the hook. The attribution play is something different. That's where the whole thing around last click and last view and stuff like that becomes quite a big sort of discussion point, right? You can fight about it whether it's right or wrong because you're showing 12 creatives. There is potentially more creatives that could have converted before, more channels that could have converted before because they've been sequencing you to eventually download. So last click and last view always becomes quite a big question, that's something different. But you're talking about attribution, but I'm just thinking from a user standpoint, what exactly it does.
Fair enough. Let's pause that. It's a fun conversation, but let's pause it. Let's step back a bit. And I want to try and understand from Saikala, who's done a lot of work surrounding creative, the team that you've built and the way that you've built the team up in order to understand creative and iterate on different versions of creative and A/B test and that sort of stuff. how does that function? What does the flow look like with that? And where did you start with creative?
Oh, okay, so
Big question, sorry.
Yeah, it started before me at Ace Games because creative team is a part of marketing team, and that's the right decision that was made before me. And they've done really, really well with making sure that there is a robust testing framework in place, the regularity of testing, competitive benchmarking, all the things that we do.
So do you have artists within the marketing team specifically for creating?
Specifically for creative, whether it's cinematic, 3D artists, rendering, producing UGCs, quick videos, statics, whatever we need, they're dedicated to marketing creative art.
Okay, okay. And so how does that feedback loop work? And also sort of side question, is that the same for you, Piyush?
Yeah, I mean, again, as Saikala said, right? So I'm gonna probably put them in a bucket. Let's say. So there are three aspects to it. You got creative designing team that designs the creative. You got a creative distribution platform, like you can have your own BI tool and stuff like that, where you upload the creative to make sure that the data is coming into the system. And the third is creative testing, right? Where you actually go and test and check on what measures you actually say that the creative is working or not, right? Now, because also the second part...
You mentioned BI, but in terms of, and for the people listening, in terms of that BI, what are you actually trying to achieve by pulling the data out of these separate platforms?
Look, the idea basically is, again, do some sort of competitive benchmark. Because obviously within Facebook, there are different layers to it. Within Facebook, within a VO campaign, a value optimization campaign, a creative would behave differently than let's compare it to a MEI campaign in Morocco, right? The behavior would be somewhat different. So it's about comparing within that channel multiple creatives that you're running and seeing maybe CTRs or whatever you believe in.
Because a campaign can have so many different creatives.
So many different creatives. And also the tagging of the creative becomes very important in that factor because you want to look at the overall picture as well. Did this creative concept work? Right? And the concept is a very large term, right? That combines a lot of creative together. Does this creative theme work? Are we launching something for the birthday of an app, like Heart of Vegas in our case? Did that work for us, right? So the tagging becomes extremely important for you to understand if the whole idea behind the creative design actually worked well or not. Because you have 4 years of data.
So not
right?
not necessarily looking at a single creative, but grouping a bunch of creatives together to come up with some form of theme.
Exactly.
Right. So you
because there's
have
always
like
a theme.
Concept, right? So yeah, we do something similar like that, but we have several stages, and this is our level up to kind of stage gate the creative, because at the beginning you just look at basic performance of the creative, whether it's CTI, PM, CTR, PM, or looking at the auctions, CPMs, where it's targeting. But then taking from that is like basic creative testing. The next one is scale up, depending on the campaign types, whether it's TROAS, AEO, or whatever it may be in different networks. And then the large one, it goes to the main bucket.
You mentioned CTR there. What metrics do you use to measure the effectiveness of creative?
ROAS.
ROAS?
Yes!
What? How?
I disagree.
Did I hear a cheer out there somewhere?
Well, not really, because it's not directly. It's kind of, we can only see accurate ROAS on Android, of course. We won't be able to see it on iOS, and that's the reality we have to live with. But essentially, now with everything that's happening, privacy, whatever, there are so many things we have to study now and connect performance and branding together, tell the stories about our games. And there's so much more that we need to connect with, let's say, our creative, with our audiences, and it goes beyond than just gender and age, like years ago. Now it has to connect to motivations, feelings, personalities, what kind of interest in different stories and
But isn't that a consequence of segmentation and the actual creatives that you're using as to whether somebody clicks or doesn't click?
Yes, but if you are
this guy always moves to click all of a sudden. You are an attribution
It's all about the click.
Yes and no, because in the end, if you want to see if you are, let's say you have 10 creatives or 5 creatives, whatever it may be, and then they are within the same, let's say, campaign, and someday one of them performs better than the other, and another week it's performing worse, let's say. If you look at the CPMs, actually, you can see if you are in the same auctions or not. And then you can see if everything is the same, and the auctions are the same, then maybe it's become more competitive, or maybe your creative needs to be changed.
Sure, that I agree with. That
Yes.
I can get behind.
But still, you know, if your creative is effective, and I don't mean like what we used to do years ago when we were able to laser target to the point of your device. I'm going to send it to, because I know you're, I don't know, IDFA or whatever, and I'm going to send you some creepy ads. No, obviously.
You've done it before.
For your birthday
Let's
only.
not get personal here.
So we can't do that anymore. So now we need to work with something that is a math of effective creative, lets us buy at the right price. We know our LTV, and our LTV always has a ceiling. I mean, I don't know when people say, oh, no, it doesn't matter, CPI. Or whatever. It does matter because at some point in time, your LTV in some country and platform is going to have a ceiling. So that's a threshold you don't want to go over within your payback window. So it is effectiveness of the creative, because right now, with the privacy at the forefront, you are actually, that's the thing that you have to work with.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of interrupted earlier as well when we were talking about the flow.
It's
So
okay.
I really want to understand that feedback loop of how the artists start to iterate on the images that are out there, or the videos that are out there.
So-
How do they iterate?
So that becomes part of testing process, essentially. So when you're doing a creative testing, right, you get all the data over there, and then you report back into your BI tool, which is where the creative team can sit together and figure out, with the marketing team, can figure out, okay, what worked, what didn't, why it didn't work. Can we play with different iterations of the same creative? Can we change the color? Can we change the text and stuff like that? And they keep on trying, they keep on learning. The fundamental issue, again, it boils down to the same thing, which is, what is the metric that people care about, right? Because if you ask a creative team, they would never say that it's ROAS. They would say CTR or CVR at max, right? Because they'll say that if I'm creating a creative in that moment the user is reacting and installing, that's a win for me. But from a UA standpoint, it will always be something long-term.
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. But I think we've changed it a little bit, actually. We used to work together, but I'm now in a different company. Made it better, I think, according to me. Our creative team, all of the artists, they know how to use Sensor Tower. So it's part of their daily job. They have to use it. So they're very curious. I'm very pleased to say that our artists, they love data.
And this is for competitive intelligence, really.
Competitive intelligence, yes. So the next level, I want them to start using some part of the creative tool in AppsFlyer that we have, because there are some things that are actually quite useful for them. But that's the next step. In addition to that, we have built internal system visualized in Looker or Tableau, whatever you want. We use Looker. And we have merged what we receive from the attribution provider plus what we have internally. And we worked on our naming conventions, other tags, and everything else to build a dashboard that is understood by everyone, and that you don't need to be super, super technical to understand. Then we made sure all the labels are, in a human language, not like pseudo ID _ something something. So something that everybody can understand, so that we have a goal of adaptability of this dashboard understanding. So
Please.
our target is not CTR and IPM.
Look,
I'll
I
tell
get
you
it.
what it is.
I get it.
I'll tell you what it is, because
We only have 8 seconds.
okay,
Yeah.
The only thing I
Tell
wanna
us
add-
quickly. That thing's flashing at us.
it's ad spend. Millions. The one creative could be $1 million ad spend.
Could
so
be.
that marketing artists look at it as like, did my creative get a lot of ad spend?
But the spend
Is it
automatically
good?
is part of the channel allocation, because if the creative is working, there will be more spend by default from the algorithm of the
Yeah,
channel.
but they don't have to work on
It's
one
on- it's on
creative
zero.
or the
They
other.
But
can
yeah,
come
it's
and
zero.
move it.
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
think so.
I want to do a load more on this, though, and I think
Yeah.
we should have another session
Yeah.
where we start to dive into and actually look at some different creatives and see what would work and what wouldn't. So we'll do that. Feel free to follow us, look at the podcast, and we'll add some more as we go along. But yeah, for now, thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks a lot,
$1 million
guys. Thank you.
creative. Yes.